Picture this. It's July 13th, 1985, and you're tuned to the channel of Live Aid. 70 artists, 16 hours of a televised concert, and one big cause. It's the fundraiser of the century. Live Aid, organized by Bob Geldof and Midge Ure, was created to raise funds for the Ethiopian famine. Streaming from 2 different locations, one at Wembley Stadium in London and one at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. The event sold a total of 161,984 tickets, and it had 1.9 billion television viewers from 150 countries. Doing a little bit of math here, but that's 40% of the global population of 1985. 13 military satellites were used, and even the state-run TV in the Soviet Union broadcasted the event. This marks one of the first times that a Western rock event was allowed on their airwaves. Because of this, Live Aid has been awarded the Guinness World Record for the largest simultaneous rock concert TV audience. The event raised over $245 million in 1985. That's around $763 million in today's money. But behind the fame of it all, there were numerous infamous moments that solidified people's careers for better or worse. Let's spin this. Let's start with the performance that single-handedly stole the entire global broadcast. Radio Gaga by Queen. Queen walked onto the stage of Wembley Stadium and started playing Radio Gaga and immediately stole everybody's attention, and they all just started clapping like a cult. Freddie Mercury had 72,000 people completely synchronized and clapping. And the Radio Goo-Goo, Radio Gaga. But what people don't realize is the ironic story behind the song itself. It was actually written by Queen's drummer Roger Taylor as a harsh critique of how MTV and music videos were forcing the industry to focus more on visuals rather than the actual musicality of it. Something even funnier about Radio Gaga by Queen is that Roger Taylor's half-French son Felix inspired the title because he would always call bad radio, Radio Caca, as in, you know. Back to Live Aid, Freddie Mercury stole the audience again with his famous Ayo performance. You know, the Ayo. I try. These moments propelled their 21-minute set into absolutely legendary status. This is probably one of the most memorable experiences to the audience's view, but what the artists remember isn't quite as fantastic. Before we get into the hardships, let's take a look at U2's 12-minute song and Bono's audience slow dance. During U2's song Bad, Bono learned the hard way that going off script can almost get you fired. U2 was booked for a quick, tight 15-minute set. They wanted them to just make an appearance. They hadn't had Joshua Tree out yet, so they were still a fairly small band. Joshua Tree came out in 1987, and that's what really made them widely popular. So to Live Aid, they were still a very small band. During U2's song Bad, the lead singer Bono leapt down into the audience to save a 15-year-old girl who was being absolutely crushed against the security barrier. What he did next shocked the entire band and almost got him fired. Bono saved her life, but then slow danced with her. For the musicians that were left on stage, they didn't know what to do. They just continued on playing the song. It took so long and the clock was ticking that they had to cut one of their most popular songs, Pride. They played a 12-minute song that wasn't even their hit. Does that make sense? Backstage, the rest of the band was furious. A lot of people think that since someone is the front man and the singer, that they are also the person who created the band and the person who has the most power. But in this case, Larry Mullins, the drummer, was the creator, and him, along with the rest of the band, kinda wanted Bono gone. They saw this stunt as total self-indulgence, and a lot of members were very hesitant about keeping him. But despite their backstage anger, they thankfully kept him, or else we would not have some amazing future tracks like the 1987 Joshua Tree. If you want to learn more about Joshua Tree, click here. It'll take you to a This Day in History video where I talk all about Joshua Tree. Pretty cool video. Talk about a bad situation. Get it? 'Cause the song bad, and it's a pun because it was bad, but they were playing bad. That was also bad. It was a bad joke. Okay. Let It Be, sung by Paul McCartney, was an absolute masterpiece that no one could hear for the first 2 verses. This this moment became one of the most stressful technical disasters of the day. This was Paul McCartney's first live stage appearance in 6 years. He hadn't toured since 1979, and he was incredibly nervous because this was his first major appearance after the tragic death of John Lennon in 1980. Paul McCartney sat down at his piano at Live Aid, ready to play Let It Be. He struck the keys and started singing, and no one could hear him for the first 2 verses. His microphone died, dead. It was gone. But what happened next was really beautiful. 72,000 fans from Wembley Stadium were roaring with the lyrics. Paul McCartney didn't even need to sing. He had 72,000 people backing him. And not only that, but Bob Geldof rounded up David Bowie, Pete Townsend, and Alison Moyet to come on stage with a microphone that actually worked to sing Let It Be with Paul McCartney. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. But the backstage found themselves in times of trouble because they were panic. The microphone was finally restored and everybody could hear Paul McCartney's beautiful voice. If you're seeking words of wisdom and find yourself in times of trouble, then just call the tech team because they will have an answer. The Who's performance of My Generation is one of the most coincidental moments of rock history. The Who is notorious for smashing, bashing, and blowing things up. But you won't believe what happened during the Live Aid feed. As Roger Daltrey was saying the line, "Why don't you all fade away?" a massive generator blew and the global broadcast feed was blacked out. People saw this. Why don't you all... The Who had officially disbanded in 1982, but Bob Geldof cornered Pete Townsend, who was notoriously reluctant, and convinced him to reunite with the Benefit, promising that their appearance would bring at least £1 or £2 million into it. They could barely play, and the bass guitar was frequently cutting in and out, so the rest of the band couldn't get the bass cues that they needed. Also, because Live Aid had a brutal satellite time, the organizers placed a giant red warning light on the stage, so that when your time is up, it starts flashing and tells you to get off. And you want to know what happened to that light when it started flashing at Pete Townsend? He took it and mutilated it so that they could have 5 extra minutes. Only the Who. And the most insane stunt goes to Phil Collins, who decided that playing In the Air Tonight in one country just wasn't enough. He had to play it in 2 different continents. Here's the full timeline for you. At 3:18 p.m. London time, Phil Collins took the stage at Wembley Stadium in London. He crushed his set, played In the Air Tonight. It was amazing. It was great. There was nothing really that wrong. And then he finished at 3:50 p.m. And then what happened next seems like it's out of a high-stakes spy movie. By 4 p.m., he is in a helicopter piloted by UK TV host Noel Edmonds, flying straight to the Heathrow Airport. By 5 p.m., he boards the legendary supersonic Concorde jet. This jet isn't any ordinary jet. It's made for speed. It flew faster than the rotation of Earth. I mean, he sort of time traveled because he landed in New York at 3:30 p.m. local time, aka Eastern time. It took him less than 3.5 hours. I don't know about you, but the last time I flew there from New York, it was about 8 hours. He did this in 3.5. Less than, actually. But the clock was still ticking. By 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, he had hopped into another helicopter that took him straight to JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. At 8 p.m. Eastern time, less than 5 hours since he landed in America, he walked onto the stage at JFK Stadium, sat down at his piano, and played In the Air Tonight again. I mean, he must have been thinking, I can feel it coming in the air tonight, in the afternoon, and across the Atlantic Ocean. Oh no. And just like Phil Collins, we have officially crossed the pond. Welcome to JFK in Philadelphia, where the heat was blistering, the rock was loud, and the backstage drama was entirely unhinged. It was very uncalled for. There was a lot happened here tonight. It was actually infamously called The Gig from Hell by Phil Collins himself. And you'll learn why in just a second, but until then, you know what that means. And now time for a break and a word from our sponsors. Today's sponsor is me, because I have a way now that you guys can support. Right now, I am my own video editor, writer, researcher, thumbnail creator, social media manager, musicologist, fact checker, statistic analysis, content strategist, channel manager, SEO specialist, creative director, graphic designer, director of photography, camera operator, audio engineer, gaffer, motion graphics artist, audio mixer, sound designer, A/B tester, prop and set designer, wardrobe coordinator, copyright manager, community manager, hair and makeup artist, playlister, idea man. If you want to help me create more content, and if you want merch in the future, send a super thanks in the comment section down below. It is an amazing new feature on my channel so that you guys can support me directly. And anyone who sends a super thanks will get shouted out in the comment section and in my next video so that I can say thanks back to you. And thank you so much to Kurt FJ, George Spencer 3973, and Ken Hobbs 8565 for being our episode 4 Super Spin This supporters. Okay, now let's get back to it. If you want to learn about a legendary train wreck, then we've got you covered, because we're talking about Led Zeppelin's performance of Rock and Roll. This was the first time that Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, and John Paul Jones had reunited after John Bonham's death in 1980, and it quickly became, as Phil Collins put it, the gig from hell. Originally, Robert Plant only agreed to do a solo set with his drummer Tony Thompson, but Jimmy Page completely hijacked the booking and turned this into a full Led Zeppelin reunion and invited Phil Collins to play drums. Also, Jimmy Page never told Robert Plant. That's why there's 2 drummers playing the song for Live Aid. The group as a whole had absolutely zero rehearsal. Backstage, Jimmy Page was being incredibly cold and harsh, and Robert Plant was just giving everybody a passive silent treatment. There was a lot of tension here, and you can see that on stage. Jimmy Page was incredibly nervous about the performance, so he self-medicated a lot. He was drunk. And also contributing to everything, Robert Plant was vocally exhausted because for the past 3 days, he had performed 3 consecutive shows. But what was happening between the drummers was absolute chaos. Phil Collins didn't know the drumming arrangements for some of the heavier songs. He did his best, but it was totally clashing with what Tony Thompson was doing. You had 2 amazing drummers who were trying to perform a very experimental drum arrangement. You think every single time that John Bonham performed a song, he played the accents and the fills and everything in the exact same way? No. And neither were Phil Collins and Tony Thompson. They were constantly clashing tempos. Also, to just add to everything, Jimmy Page's guitar was out of tune, and also the monitors were having errors so nobody could hear each other. It was a disaster. John Paul Jones was the only member who actually played his part correctly. Congrats, John Paul Jones, gold star. But you won't believe what happened after their performance. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were cornered by MTV, and while Robert Plant was moodily silent, Jimmy Page blamed Phil Collins for everything that happened that was wrong. Keep in mind, Jimmy Page was the one who invited Phil Collins in the first place, and now he's blaming him for everything. He didn't say anything about his tuned guitar or being, intoxicated. Phil Collins was so insulted by their hospitality that he almost walked out on stage, but he stayed out of a sense of duty. Afterwards, Phil Collins publicly exposed Jimmy Page for his lack of prep and drunkenness. It's been a long time since they rock and rolled. It's been a long, lonely time. This is one of the songs that was removed from the box set of Live Aid because they were very unhappy. Duran Duran's performance of A View to a Kill was legendary for 2 reasons. 1, it was a complete and utter milestone, and 2, it was the most infamous bum note of pop history. On the exact day of Live Aid, A View to a Kill hit #1 on Billboard's Hot 100. This is the first James Bond theme song and still the only James Bond theme song that has ever hit #1 on the US Billboard Hot 100. But behind all the glitz and the glam, the band was actually fracturing into 2 pieces, aka Arcadia and Power Station. I mean, to begin with, the JFK Stadium was a disaster zone. There was extreme heat, the monitors weren't working, so they couldn't hear themselves, and there was a lot of audio feedback. But also, Duran Duran's singer Simon Le Bon had spent the entire day practicing. But back then, he didn't have any sort of vocal technique. He relied on raw instinct rather than, taking care of his voice. He didn't warm up, he just sang, he belted, he went for it. He strained to hit the notes, and straining caused a lot of vocal damage later on. So now he has great technique. But because of all these factors, what happened next was tragic. Simon Le Bon went for the high note on the lyric, "A fatal kiss is all you need," and hit the most bum note that pop history has ever heard. It was flat, it was in falsetto, it wasn't the note, it was something else out of this world. He immediately looked up and looked to his bassist, John Taylor, and was like, "Did anybody else hear that? Please tell me nobody else heard that." This performance went down as the final time the 5 original members of Duran Duran performed together until they reunited in 2003. Talk about a fatal note. Madonna's performance of Holiday was awesome, but also completely defiant. Madonna was introduced by Bette Midler. Madonna was walking on stage, but secretly walking into a media hornet's nest. Just a few days before the performance, Playboy and Penthouse magazines had published unauthorized pre-fame pictures of Madonna in the nude. This was back in the days where she was a very struggling artist. The press expected her to hide in shame, but what she did instead was notorious. She walked onto that stage wearing a multi-layered outfit in the Philadelphia heat, mind you, and said, "I ain't taking off today. But her performance wasn't all perfect. There were many times that critics said that Madonna sounded out of breath or like she was struggling to hit the notes during her intense choreography. But what happened backstage proves that being a newcomer in the industry is really hard. Guitarist Mike Campbell noted that since she was a fresh rising star, she didn't have the clout that old rockers had. She was reportedly turned away when she tried to hang out in Tom Petty and Bob Dylan's backstage area. But her high energy set, including a cover of Revolution by the Beatles, solidified her stardom and proved that performing at Live Aid wasn't just a holiday. It was something to celebrate. One of the most shocking moments of the night belongs to Mick Jagger and Tina Turner and their performance of It's Only Rock and Roll. Tina Turner wasn't even supposed to sing this song because she was already on her own tour. Mick Jagger brought her on during the song State of Shock. She was originally only supposed to be a special guest, stepping in to sub Michael Jackson on the song State of Shock. But her and Mick Jagger had a deep history together. Tina Turner actually opened for the Rolling Stones a decade earlier and taught Mick Jagger how to dance. A lot of the dance moves she taught him actually became his trademark. So thank you, Tina Turner. So during the song It's Only Rock and Roll, they're singing together. Everything's going great. She's in all leather and he's wearing a bright yellow shirt. And Mick Jagger goes up behind her and pulls down her miniskirt, leaving her in just a leather leotard. The whole crowd was like, Was that planned? Did that mean to happen? Did he just do that to her? Rest assured, it was all planned. Tina Turner revealed in her 2018 memoir that Mick Jagger had come up to her backstage and said, "Does that skirt come off?" And what happened next shocked the whole audience. Fishnet stockings and all. But hey, it's only rock and roll. And lastly, Bob Dylan, Ron Wood, and Keith Richards closed out the US side of Live Aid with Blowin' in the Wind. And yet again, we deal with technical nightmares. Yay! Our favorite. So for this song specifically, since it was closing out, they lowered down the curtains, which also covered up all the amplifiers, all the monitors, all the speakers that they would use on stage in order for the artists to hear themselves. So it was just like a muffled mess in the background for them. For the audience, it sounded great. You know, they could hear all the guitars because all the guitars are plugged into the huge speakers that are on the side of the stage. It was a little bit of a mess. Also, at one point during their set, Bob Dylan had broke a string. Struggling to play his pieces correctly, Ron Wood actually took his guitar off and gave it to Bob Dylan so he could keep playing the correct part. For that part of the set, Ron Wood then just stood there playing air guitar until a guitar tech came and brought him another guitar. Here you go, you can play your instrument now. But the real iconic moment of this set is when Bob Dylan addressed something that made the organizers super mad. He said, and I quote, "I hope that some of the money, they can take just a little bit of it, maybe 1 or 2 million maybe, and use it, say, to pay the mortgages of some of the farmers here." Dylan, Bob, and then the other Bob, Geldof. He was mad. But luckily for him, this prompted Willie Nelson to start Farm Aid, the US version of Band-Aid. So, you win some, you lose some. And that, my friends, was Live Aid. Hello. Steve? Well, yeah, I didn't tell you to ask him to be on this episode. It's for Live Aid. He wasn't even in Seattle yet. He was still living in Virginia. Do you not know your girl history? This was the year before he had moved to go be in a band called Scream. And then it wasn't until the 90s until he even met Nirvana. He should be in something that's related to the 90s or the 2000s with Foo Fighters or something, anything, but not the 80s. He would have been, what, 16? He was probably still at home playing on pillows. Steve, stop blaming it on people. It wasn't your assistant's fault. Okay, so she got oat milk instead of almond milk once. Steve, has anybody ever told you that you're a diva?